Aloha, everybody. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPR and radio. And this is Friday, January 7th, 2022, the first time I was able to say that this year. I just want to tell everybody really quick, thank you for participating in World Enlightenment. And just start paying attention now to what happens on the planet. That's all I can say, especially the good things. And when you see maybe people standing up for a restaurant owner in Australia when the police are harassing them and actually get the police to back down, that's enlightenment. That's people with courage and really connecting to the creator and standing up for what's right. But tonight, I thought we would have some fun and we would do some predictions with astrology with Dave Petrella, right? Okay. Which I call an astrology whiz. And he's gonna, we're gonna discuss astrology and where the planets, what they hold us, what's in store for us this year. Hi, Dave. Come on in. How are you?
Hey, Kathy. Yep, I'm good. How about you?
I'm pretty good, but before we get started, I wanted to tell you something really, really funny that happened today to me at the store. Is that okay? I thought it would be funny, but remember, I'm from Midwest Michigan, and we do have a very interesting, witty, sarcastic sense of humor. So let me set up what actually happened now. I'm from Michigan, where it's very, very cold, okay? And I grew up what they call the golden years of the Union. So when people had retired from working, they would go down to Florida, okay, in retirement. So I had these two young men come into the store today, 20 years old, and they lived in Florida. And I started laughing with them, and I go, God, that's a state of old people. And the one young one goes, oh my God, do I ever know? When I see somebody young on the street, it's like, oh my God, look, a young person. I don't know. I kind of equated it to looking for your deer spotting, when you go out at night and you're like, oh my God, there's a deer. Oh, wow. Okay. So, and he looks at me, he goes, do you know what we call the state of Florida? And I went, what? Oh, God. God's waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. It cracked me up. Now, coming from Michigan, and those of you that know geography, you'll know that Michigan is surrounded by water and all the way around. And it looks like a hand. So we said, we were raised in the hand of God. So why can't you go down to Florida and be in God's waiting room? I mean, okay. Anyway, I guess you're not really laughing. I thought it was funny. If you're really old, you really get it. You think it's humorous.
Well,
waiting room down there. I mean,
well, I've heard it about Arizona too, Kathy. I've heard that one a few times, and well, I'll tell you what, like it's a good place to be because it's warm almost all of the year, so it's a good place to wait. I think that's accurate, and it's actually well in Hawaii too, but the strength of the sun's rays are obviously a lot higher, and I've actually lived in Florida for periods in the past, and it really helps to get well, I mean, it just makes you feel, even if I was having maybe not a great day or something, I walked outside, the sun was strong, the just lots of UV kind of and high energy.
I know, but they've got alligators there.
Well, you know what?
Okay.
I've never had a problem with one. I've never even, actually, I don't even think I've seen one out of like a reserve or something like that, or Disney World. I've seen alligators live in the wild in Texas, actually. But I guess I haven't seen one in Florida, and I've been on some trails too. I haven't seen one though. So
wow. Okay. Put that on your bucket list. So we're going to talk about astrology. So before we jump in, I kind of mentioned that, a lot of people don't know about the signs, and can you give a little blurb on each sign and what their basic characteristics are? And I know that it can change depending on the person and the year you were born and all that. But, am I wrong saying that Leos can be stubborn? They do like to be kings and queens, and they got really good hair.
Yes, that's correct. Yep, that is definitely
Okay.
correct. There's a reason for for categorizations and things like that, because if you look at large groups of people, and actually this is something I talked about with someone recently, they said, oh, like you can probably just look at my chart and make anything fit for me and say it's based on astrology or whatever. And I said, well, you know what? Guess what? After you do thousands of these, and then you can build a large database, then if you were to be able to see what I'm seeing, then you would see. If you're looking at it objectively, you're going to see large patterns. And in fact, if someone's watching, they don't believe in astrology, take all your friends and family, figure out their birthdays, put them in their proper sign, and then look at all those people as a group and just think about it as you read the description. That's what I would encourage. And then you're going to see how incredibly accurate the pattern is. It's a really basic experiment people can do if they're curious about it. But yeah, in any case, so there's 12 signs. You can actually see if you can. I'm not sure if you can read the writing on the whiteboard I have, but this is the zodiac. There's 12 signs in the zodiac. It always traditionally starts in Aries, which is the spring equinox. So Aries people are all about action. They often act, and actually a lot of times they don't really think. They just start doing something, and that can get them into some pretty dicey situations. Actually, um, they can be argumentative. They can be kind of warlike. They kind of like to fight. They like a good battle. So that's kind of basic for Aries. And then second sign is Taurus. Taurus is when everything, Aries is the big burst of energy, and Taurus is when things really slow down and calm down. And Taurus people really enjoy all of the pleasures of life. They like colors and candles and television and food, actually, especially food. They love food. They take their time. They're also a very stubborn sign because they're in the middle of the season. And it's the same with Leo, too, Kathy, is that you're in the middle of the summer. And so that makes it's called a fixed sign. All the fixed signs are stubborn, all four of them. Taurus are also they're very caring, they're very sweet people, and they don't want to fight. But if you push them, they are a bull. So just be aware that they have that in them if it's necessary. Okay, the third sign is Gemini, and Gemini, it's the twins, and that's when things start to split. Yep, and they're on both sides, so they can see both sides of every issue. They can usually do it pretty objectively, which is really impressive. If you've ever seen a Gemini do that, they don't invest necessarily on one side, or they don't identify with one side, so they're not offended if someone else comes in and says something on the other side. They don't really show a lot of emotions. They like to joke. They're kind of the jokers. They like to play around. They love to be sociable. They're really good time. They're really fun people. But it's kind of hard to sometimes get close to them because they don't show a lot of the emotions. Okay, then that's the spring season. Those three signs are in the spring, and then you got the summer solstice, and then the fourth sign is in Cancer, and Cancer is the crab, of course. And Cancers, they're very emotional people. They need to feel safe. They need to have a safe space. So if they feel uncomfortable, they need to have a place where they can kind of go crawl away and hide for a while. They're very good hosts. Very good hosts. They're generous. They like to be make people feel comfortable, and they tend to be kind of conservative. They're pretty careful. They're pretty cautious. And then the fifth sign is Leo, which is again that's in the middle of the summer season now, and that's a fixed sign. Can be a very stubborn sign. Leos, like you said, Kathy, they're the kings and the queens of the zodiac. They really generally need to be the center of attention all the time if possible. That would make them very happy. They can get jealous if they're not getting it and someone else is. But they're very fair. They try to be very, very fair to everyone, and they don't hold grudges, but they never forget. So if you do something wrong to a Leo, they're not going to forget what you did. So don't try to pretend that you didn't do it because they know that you did, and they might keep their distance. The other thing Leos do too is if they're not interested, they'll just walk away. They don't even say anything. They just disappear and they're just gone. And the person be like, yeah, yeah, they'd be like, where'd that person go? Well, if you think about a cat, that's what cats do too. If they're not interested, and Leo's the cat's not interested, it just walks away. That's the end of it. Okay, so that's Leo, the 5th sign. The 6th sign is Virgo. Virgo is the last sign of the summer. Virgo is it's the Virgin, so it's a very conservative sign. They're very careful and cautious. They have a lot of anxious energy, and they get nervous a lot, and they talk very fast because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. But they're very sweet people. They're very generally positive, happy, great hosts. They're really good at organizing and researching and information, putting things together, all those types of things. Okay, and then now we get the fall equinox, and this is the 3rd season. It begins with Libra, which are the scales. And again, there's 2 sides, and so it's balancing the summer with the fall, and that's the scale in that instance of describing it, is that you're trying to balance the two in between the 2 seasons like that. But Libras tend to be very indecisive. It's very hard for them to make decisions usually. They're very sweet though, very nice people. They try to be humanitarians, and they try to be they're really good diplomats. They're excellent at that. They try to have everyone get along. All they want is peace. They want peace and harmony. And it's ruled by Venus, so anything to do with love and being kind and being generous to people and being fair, of course, fair and justice. It's all these things. That's what Libra is. Okay, 8th sign is Scorpio. Scorpio contains Halloween, just to give people an idea of kind of some of the energy. And so Scorpios, they tend to be very intense people. They're very good leaders if they have the chance, but if you're standing in their way and they have to get through, they will plow through you. So just be aware. It's not a gentle sign usually. Now, if they feel understood, they can be very loyal, a very loyal person. They can be very loyal to you, but they have to feel like you're understanding who they are and what they want and what they're about. They don't usually show their full, really actually anything they have in terms of their deck of cards. They kind of keep everything secret. They like to monitor everything. They kind of watch and survey everything. And they have a lot of dark interest in dark mysticism and occult topics and things like that.
And I was always said, you don't really make a Scorpio mad, because you think Leos never forget. The Scorpios, correct me if I'm wrong, not only don't they forget, but they really try to get back at you.
Oh yeah, they will. And Scorpio is also a fixed sign, by the way, one of the 4, and they will. Well, it's ruled by Mars, so they will fight. They don't have a problem fighting, but they are actually kind of secretly sensitive, but they will never let that on. It's a water sign, so that's the feminine aspect of it, but it has Mars as the ruler. And here's the thing that they do too, Cathy, is that, and I'm not trying to blow your cover, Scorpios, but I just want people to understand, there's an explanation for everyone here. Scorpios can be really like emotionally manipulative. So sometimes they'll fight you passive aggressively. Sometimes they'll fight you head on. They always have a way to do it, and they always will do it if they feel like they want to. And it's not hard for them. It's just how they are. Okay, so Sagittarius is the 9th sign, the last sign of the fall season. And Sagittarius, they have a lot of energy. It's like one of the best ways I've heard described is they're like a ball of energy. And don't try to get them to calm down or to lessen their energy. It's not, they're not going to be happy with you if you try to do that. They value their freedom probably first. They're very interested in traveling. They like to go different places, and they're also very interested in wisdom and philosophy. They can be very, very blunt, and that can sound very offensive to some people, because they don't really sugarcoat it. They just say whatever they feel like saying. They can be tyrants too, because it's ruled by Jupiter. So that's Sagittarius. Okay, and then the last quadrant is starting at the winter solstice is Capricorn. And Capricorn, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight in terms of 2022, because it's going to play an important part. But Capricorn, they're very serious people. They're very disciplined and determined. They are great at doing projects and completing them. They don't necessarily rush, but there's no extras with Capricorn. So they're just, they just say it how it is, and there's nothing, literally, there's no flair at all. There's nothing extra at all. Sometimes they don't even talk because they don't have to. They don't talk unless they have to, generally is how a Capricorn is. But it doesn't mean they're not feeling proud or happy inside. They just don't need to show it. They have a little devilish sense of humor too. Capricorns like games, and if you think about the devil comes from Capricorn, or the depiction of the devil as a hoofed animal. It comes from Saturn, and actually Saturn in the Satyr too, which is from mythology with the cloven hooves and everything. And it's the ruler of Capricorn. And Capricorn is the goat. So if we know these things, we can. And this is hell too down here. This is the winter. In Spanish, winter is invierno, which is inferno. It's actually the opposite of what it means. But all these things we can see where the words came from. Okay, and then we've got Aquarius, which is the 11th sign. We're in the age of Aquarius now. So when I describe Aquarius, also think about basically roughly since 2012, this is the general energy that's going to be pervading the planet. It's kind of the backdrop of the play, if you will, of what's happening currently. And so Aquarius, they're very progressive. They're humanitarian. They are futuristic. Good motto that they live by is to live and let live. So, they try to do their own thing and they let other people do their own thing. But they're interested in progress of humanity. They can be a little quirky, a little weird, a little bit strange. They like having weird things around. They like sometimes doing things just to toss things up and see how people respond to it. And sometimes it's also a serious sign, and sometimes they keep to themselves because they just do their own thing. But they're also pretty mystical people. Not as mystical as Pisces, which is the 12th sign, which is the last one. And Pisces is also going to figure very importantly in what we'll talk about too tonight, because while Pisces people, they're the wisest sign of the zodiac. They have a little bit of all of the signs before them in them. And so it's actually called a mutable sign, so they can change. They can change who they are depending on circumstance. But they're very sensitive people. They try to be nice and love everyone, try to treat people fairly, but they can also come across as tyrants as well because they're ruled by Jupiter. And a tyrant, it'll feel like people will feel a lot of times judged by Pisces people, like you're judging me because you think I'm less than you or something like that. People just have to understand that they have a lot of good wisdom. And if you want wisdom, you really should listen to a Pisces. And if you want to talk about the dream world, also listen to Pisces because they know all about that. Mm. So those are the 12.
Okay, let's get into. We've got Mercury in retrograde coming up soon. Why should we be worried or concerned about it?
Well, any of the retrograde planets, most people have like at least one in their birth chart, which is it's the state of the sky at the time you were born, which is the time and location, day and year, and all these things. And whatever was in that sky at that exact moment of birth, it gets stamped into your mental construct and into your physical body, and then you live with that template for the rest of your life. So a lot of people have a retrograde something, not always Mercury, but retrograde in general. It indicates that the energy is forced internally. And so it actually sets up a situation where it forces you to deal with energy inside of yourself as opposed to outside of yourself. And so what it does is, and I'll mention retrograde is the apparent backwards motion of the planet from the vantage point of Earth. It's not technically it's not supposed to be actually moving backwards. It just looks like it's moving backwards, but it creates internal karmic challenges generally, and it can create physical challenges in the body. Okay, so Mercury, being a fast planet and being a tricky planet, likes to play games. It's also the messenger from mythology too, and it can do one of two things. And I always like to say that the astrology is very dualistic. So if people say, oh, it's a retrograde, it's going to be a problem. Well, not necessarily. It might be. For a lot of people, they will feel it, but a lot of people will help them in their productivity. So I'll just start with the good side. If it's affecting you, and everyone's different, by the way, it depends a lot on your own chart. Mercury, when you say Mercury's retrograde right now, that's indicating what's called a daily transit, which means that that's what it's doing right now in the sky. Now, how that compares to your own chart, your own birth chart, is going to determine how it affects you specifically as an individual. It's not the same for everyone. But it can do one of two things. Either it can improve your speed. If you're trying to do a project and like you need a boost, it might help you because it's a quick planet. But on the other side, it's just as possible that it could start to trick you and play games and kind of mess around and flip things around on you. And that's, when most people say, ooh, Mercury retrograde, that's what most people are thinking. Is that, yeah, it can be very tricky.
You wouldn't start a project, brand new project or a relationship in retrograde, would you?
I probably wouldn't if I happen to look at it. One of the things that I do, I was talking with someone the other day about this too, is that if you're in tune enough to your own energy and your own sovereignty and also the energy around you, generally you're going to actually feel what the right thing to do is. Now, I know not everyone's at that space, and you have to, have to be able to move energy, and takes a lot of practice and time. But I can always feel if it's the right time, and I don't have to necessarily look at the daily transits and stuff like that. I probably initially would not do that, and actually a good way to do it, Cathy, I would say, is that like Mercury retrograde is starting on January 14th this year, going through February 3rd. And it's also, by the way, it's also May 10th through June 2nd, and then September 9th through October 2nd. And so what I would do is people who are really interested in the effects, just watch how you're reacting, and watch how your life is during that period of time, and see if you see a very productive time for yourself, then maybe look at the next retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and maybe think about, okay, maybe I'll start something here. But if you watch it and it's not something that's good for you, then no, I wouldn't. I agree with you. I wouldn't do that next time.
Interesting. My understanding also, it's a time where electrical equipment can break down. It goes for the weak spots and whatever, whether you can have communication problems, phone problems. Like I said, your car can break down, your computer may not work. Projects may not come together, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I would always say, if you have a meeting, make sure you have a backup for that meeting in retrograde, and then a backup for the backup, and then, run with the wind.
Well, and you know what, Cathy, I always have a backup anyway, every day of the year. So if people make plans like that, if you plan for things not necessarily going perfectly, then you're always ready, no matter what happens.
But like you said, if you've already have something started already, and then it goes into retrograde, it would be a good time to finish it, if that's where you were at in that project.
Yeah, sure. Or you could, if you had the time, you could technically wait until it's finished and then you could pick it back up if you wanted to. There's so many options, but like I was saying before, I really think the best way to do it, because it does affect everyone differently. Some affects good in good ways, some affects bad ways, is like watch this retrograde coming up starting January 14th and just see how you feel. You could even, if you wanted to, you could even keep a journal and just see how your daily life is. Do you feel like you're being assisted, or do you feel like you're being thwarted? And then based on what you feel, then I would say the next time that comes around, then I would plan accordingly.
Well,
If
I
you want
also
to.
found, because I have a store, that a lot of times I call it the retrograde crowd, because that's when they come back into my life. And
Oh, okay.
see them in retrograde, and it really cracks me up. They walk in, I go, ah, it's got to be retrograde, and it is.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. You could say something similar maybe about like the full moon that has obviously a lot of effect. And the thing to remember too, well, here's the other thing that's important is Mercury it's a close planet relatively. So, if you're even talking about physics, whatever's closest is going to have a large effect. It does depend on the mass and volume and all kinds of different things in physics as well, but these are close familiar planets, and if they go in retrograde, they're not far away, so you're going to feel it just like the full moon, the Mercury, of course. And
hey, sometimes you don't want to get out of bed when Mercury's in retrograde. you know it's like, keep your conversations really short so you just don't have that communication. I put my foot in my mouth again.
yeah, that's a good point, Kathy, because Mercury it is the messenger, so it is in charge of communication. It rules Gemini, it rules Virgo, and so I agree with that. Be careful what you say. Like, it might want to it might feel like it's on the tip of your tongue and you just have to say it, but be careful. Especially it's gonna feel like it's moving fast. It's like, I need to say this, I need to say it now, and I need to say it fast. But be careful. And I agree, that's Mercury retrograde. Yep.
And isn't it also kind of like the full moon that, so Mercury in retrograde actually starts the 14th, but then you've got that curve, like for the first, 3 days before, 3 days after rule, that you've got to be careful with what you do.
Yeah, and that's called an orb generally in astrology. I would say that's generally very accurate. Anytime you have an event, 3 days, and sometimes it's interesting though, because there's what's called applying and separating, and if you're coming into it, a lot of times it's a stronger effect than when you're pulling away from it. So if you're on the applying side of whatever it is, which means the closest side to you, from whichever vantage point, then you're going to be. I would be more vigilant than I would be if you're on the other side, which is called the separating side. But then here's the other thing: is that it doesn't stop at 3 degrees on either side. It keeps going. The way I usually do it is I do a 3 degree orb on either side, and then I do a 7 degree orb on either side, which is like the second level, in terms of effects. It's like a fair amount of effect, whereas a 3 degree is a strong amount of effect. And then I go up into about a 9 degree orb, 9 degrees or 9 days to either side. And then after that, I just kind of just forget it, because it's so nominal after that
It's a
but you're
lot
right.
of time that comes around 4 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. Now
Okay, let's
can I say one more thing, Kathy?
yes.
Okay, so the Mercury retrograde, the other thing that it does is that it will try to convince you sometimes that you believe something that you don't. So be very vigilant. It's like, you don't believe something, or you don't want to do something, and it's going to try to come in and trick you, saying, "Oh no, look, hey, you believe this side? Well, how about this side? Because maybe you should try it this way." So just be careful, because it tries to get you to do sometimes to do things that you don't believe in. People should be aware of that.
All right. Wow, that was pretty cool. So let's get into predictions, Wizard.
Okay. All right. So we already did that one. So since we're on retrogrades, we'll just continue, because there's a few, more that I want to highlight in 2022. All right. So I already listed the 3 coming up for Mercury retrograde. And then we'll talk about really quick Venus retrograde. Now, Venus retrograde is, let's see, it actually started, we're actually in it right now, believe it or not. And so that started on December 19th. It's going all the way through January 29th of this month and this year, of course. And that's Venus is love. So in terms of starting a new relationship, it's probably not the best idea. But
it can pull old unfinished business back into your life, right?
Yeah, it can. If you start getting phone calls from an ex or something, or something of that nature, then I wouldn't be surprised at all. No, you're right about that. But again, it can go either way, you know. So it might be maybe you meet someone under like not great circumstances, and maybe it's rough for a couple weeks, and then when you come out of the retrograde, well, you met that person, so now you can continue to get to know them, and that might not be a bad thing necessarily. But yeah, that's a good point. Okay, then there's Mars retrograde coming up on October 30th of this year, going all the way through January 12th of 2023, actually. And you know, Mars retrogrades is dangerous because Mars is the planet of war, but it's also the planet of action. So you know, it doesn't have to be something that's going to destroy things and be negative. It's also something to get things done, and you can get things done in a non-violent, you know, peaceful way. If you have a focus on Mars and when you're doing projects and stuff like that, then you're going to be a lot more likely to actually just get it accomplished because you have that support. But watch out for the you know, confrontations and stuff like that. That's a good word for it. Or any well, anything that could be like an intense argument or situation or something. Just be aware during that time that it's going to be elevated. It's going to be an elevated chance for that to happen. That kind of thing. Okay, then let's see. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Mars, Mercury. Oh, okay, that was split up. All right. And then there's actually one, you're right, Kathy. So there's 4 Mercury retrogrades, and I'll just mention the last one because I hadn't. The last one starts December 29th of this year. It goes through January 18th of next year, of 2023. So that's, you know, a little bit away.
But what were the other 2?
With Venus?
No, Mercury in retrograde. You got January 14th, what we're going into. And what were the other 2?
Okay, we got January 14th through February 3rd. We've got May 10th through June 2nd. And we've got September 9th through October 2nd. And then
it's really something good I would put on your calendar, guys. So, you know, you just have a heads up what's coming and act accordingly, right?
Yeah, be aware of it. I also mentioned this real quickly. I just talked with someone recently. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, I would say it's probably more likely that you're going to know how to deal with it because it's familiar to you. It doesn't mean it makes it easy or pleasant, but it's, you know, you live with that every day if that's in your birth chart. So it's not something out of the ordinary for you necessarily. So those people who have that in their birth chart, and if you don't know, by the way, I mean, obviously I do birth charts. That's what I do as a career. I'm an astrologer. So if you'd like to have a birth chart done to find out about that or find out about anything else, let me know, and we can get that taken care of for you too. But the Mercury, like I said, if you have, and not just for Mercury, if you have any of these planets in retrograde in your birth chart, and then it comes up during the daily year in retrograde during the daily transit, you're probably going to feel like, oh, I'm used to this. You know, I live with this every day. So you might be a little bit better to armed to figure out how to deal with that in that case. So, you know, just pay attention. But I agree with you, Kathy. Like, it wouldn't hurt to put on your calendar. I don't think that's a bad idea, just to be aware of it. Okay, so there's 2 more parts that I want to talk about, and we have about 20 minutes, I think. Okay, so I'll talk about 2 more parts, and then, you know, we can obviously talk about whatever that people have interest in that you want to ask. There's 2 big events. Now, the retrogrades, those types of things happen, you know, somewhat frequently, but there's other things that don't happen that frequently, and that's because of the orbit of specifically the outer planets that have much longer orbits. You don't see them for, well, for instance, we're going to be talking about Jupiter first. You see Jupiter once every 12 years. You know, the Jupiter return is once every 12 years. So it's not that often. So you're going to notice it when it comes around if you're paying attention and if you know what to look for. And so what's going to be happening is that it actually already started. And I already have some really good proof. I talked to someone again about this. So Jupiter moved into Pisces on December 28th of last year. And I'll even say from personal experience, it was right around that day I felt a serious shift. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an astrologer. I had the way that I approached things changed. The communications I was getting from people changed. The research I was doing changed. I mean, everything had shifted. And in my particular instance, I'm actually Pisces. Now, and in my birth chart, I have Jupiter in Pisces. So for me, this is very familiar. Again, what I was just talking about before is that if you're seeing something in the daily transit that matches your birth chart, you're going to say, oh, this is like very familiar to me because you live with it every day. So anyway, so that entered Pisces on the 28th of December, and it's going to go through May 10th of this year. So it's a pretty large time period. And so what we're going to have happen in there is, first of all, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, which means that that's where Jupiter wants to be. Jupiter wants to be in one of two places. It's either Pisces or Sagittarius, and that it rules both of those two signs. So when Jupiter comes into Pisces, what that means is that you have Pisces at full force. Jupiter was not in Pisces, then Pisces is, it's just doing its own thing. But when you have that support from the ruling planet, you have some serious, serious Pisces power. And on top of that, Neptune is also in Pisces right now. And Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces. So this does not happen very frequently. This is really good. I mean, you have the ruler and the co-ruler in its proper sign. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So what that means is basically full. I mean, if I could say more than 100%, I would. But let's just say full Pisces power, starting on the 28th of December, going through May 10th of this year. So what that means, again, it's always dualistic. So there's two sides to everything. And so what you have is, on the positive side, Pisces, again, it's the wise sign. It's the sign of wisdom. It's a sign of the dream world. It's the sign of caring for other people, paying attention, sensitivity, all these things. So I would expect to be seeing a huge push in our community right now. People, light worker community, people, starseed, indigo children, whatever, all these types of things. I'm expecting a big boost to help us. We need a little bit of a boost to help us out here. And that's the boost we've been waiting for, Cathy. It's a really big deal. So anything to do with the dream world to having to do with wisdom, we're getting some serious assistance from that. Now, on the other side, Pisces is, again, like I mentioned before, it can also be a tyrannical sign. So Pisces, the tyrant, on the other side. And, in terms of what I would suggest is to pay attention to oppressive systems, because we're also going to be feeling a lot of that. And we are, in my opinion, we have been actually.
Oh, absolutely. See what's going on in Australia and Austria, and yeah.
Right. So, that's going to get a boost too, I believe, unfortunately, because it might probably going to vacillate back and forth.
But can it think the other way when people, when you say people rising up and speaking out and standing up for themselves?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and using the wisdom to do it, and understanding laws of sovereignty and things like that, is that we have our own human laws and all these things that are above systems. Yeah, it's both. It can be both at the same time. They can flip flop. It can be either or. So just the important thing is to know the possibilities that exist within that realm. It's on both sides. It's the tyranny aspect, and strong tyranny too, again, because this is Pisces at full power, or I should say, a lot of wisdom and high level spirituality, pulling from the dream world 100%, which also means spiritual guides and all these great things, assistants coming to earth, things to help us, divine things, entities coming to help us. Okay, and then it's coming back actually October 28th this year, going through December 20th of this year as well. That's a second pass. So during those periods, again, be looking out for the things that I was talking about. And if you happen to have, well, and again, it's something that, you know, if you know your birth chart and you know the positioning of what that's going to do for your own natal chart, then it's either, you know, it's either personally, it can help you. It can also be a challenge, or it can be both. And it depends on the aspects and the angles and all these things in your birth chart. Okay, and then let's see, in May, Jupiter moves into Aries. So during the period, you know, the 2 times that Jupiter is moving into Pisces, it's going to be in Aries. So when Jupiter is in Aries, so what is that? Let's see, May 11th through October 27th, I guess. During that period, I would expect a pretty big confrontational energy, really like a big, broad spectrum confrontational energy. And then it's going to be reverted back to where it was starting December 28th of 2021, which is, again, it's the wisdom aspect, the helpful spiritual, high-level spirituality. Okay, anything that you want to add with that, Cathy? Or
no, but when you're doing, you know, energy work and you understand that, you know, like you were saying, May 11th through October 27th can be confrontational, but you can also give a lot of energy to all the light workers.
Oh yeah, that's going to be,
neutralize that confrontation.
oh yeah, and that's going to be happening. You know, I already feel it personally. I mean, I feel like I'm actually being assisted, you know, by an invisible force, that's how astrology works. That's how it's always worked. And of course by my friends and you know, coworkers and things like that, and people I work with, that we're all helping each other too. But it's coming from all angles, and it's never just one. Usually, it's not just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even within the good aspects, there's many ways it can move within that. It might be heavy on the wisdom and not as heavy on the sensitivity, or it might be vice versa. It could be, you know, just to know. The best way to do it is to know all of the options, so that way when you see it happen, you can pin it and say, this is what it was, or this is the reason why.
When you were doing my chart, and he really is good, guys. You should call him and talk to him about it. We talked about, you know, like when you're and many people are doing this. You know, they're looking for their divine mates, and how do I know if this is the right person for me, and blah blah blah. And you were talking about the 30, 60, 90-day rule. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, okay, I'm gonna start with 90, I think. So 90 degrees, for each day of the year, it's a degree is equivalent to a day. So what that means is a 90-degree angle to your birthday is called a square. And a square is, again, it's not just bad, it's both. And I just actually went through my square to my natal sun recently, and guess what? And this is the thing, is that it wasn't until after it happened that I realized what happened, because I said, wow, this is ridiculously powerful. What is going on right now? And then when I looked, or when I paid attention, I said, okay, yeah, I just went through my square. Of course, that's what it is. So with a square, if you're talking about, are we talking about matches specifically about, okay, with other people? All right. So you can actually you can even do the calculation yourself if you want. Obviously, I'd be happy to do it for you guys if that's what you're looking for with astrology. But 90 days before your birthday or 90 days after your birthday is a square, and that's going to it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be exceptionally rocky. It's like it's like a roller coaster, up and down. You're going side to side. It's really wild. It's a really wild ride when you go through a square. But it's also really good for information coming in, because it gives you a perspective that you would not normally ever have, because it's a perspective that you don't even want to spend time in, because it doesn't feel good. So if you're talking about a 90-degree or 90-day before or after your birthday, just be aware that it's going to be good and bad, and you can't separate them. You're going to feel both of them. So it's very powerful. It's very it's very interesting, and it's like a very curious thing. not do it. You can't not pay attention to it. You can't look away. I'll put it that way. If someone's a square to you, you just can't. You are transfixed by this person. So that's a lot of the appeal for that. But it's also they're going to put you on a roller coaster. So you better be ready for that if you guys want to go into that to the 90 degree. The 60 degree is generally considered
your birthday to birthday. So this is your sun sign, and it would have nothing to do with your rising or moon.
Well, right, and that in this instance, but you can also use it to see how is the moon responding or how is my ascendant responding. You can use it for any body at all. Astrology is limitless. You can project anything, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish and look for, then that's when it makes sense if you can identify that to figure out what it is. Okay, so what it is, 60 degrees is called a sextile. It's a gift. It's like a gift. That's the best word I can have for it, use for it. And it's gonna feel really good. It's easy. It feels good. Feels pretty natural, and there's not a lot of bumps and stuff. So that's one I would say. I wouldn't really even think twice about it. Yeah, I would say green light for a 60 degree or 60 days before or after your birthday. I'd say green light for that. At least initially, and since the natal suns are the strongest, it's going to carry the most energy. So I would say I would support that one for sure. And then a 30 day 30 degree before or after is it's really splitting. It's really getting split. The smaller angles are not generally as powerful because they just don't. They're so close. It's just again, it's physics. So if okay, I should put it that way. But if you have an angle that's a larger angle, you have more energy coming in. It's a longer distance to travel to get to that meeting point. Whereas if you have a closer angle, it's much less of a distance. That's really what I'm talking about. So for 30 degrees, I haven't spent a lot of time with that. I do spend some time with actually a 33 degree angle. You guys can look at that one if you want. That's one that, again, though, I feel like it's 50-50. So if you wanted to do that, look 30 or 33 before, 30, 33 after, and see how you feel if you can meet a person during that time. But out of all of those, in terms of if you want smooth sailing, I would go with 60.
Yeah, but sure. Would you do the like 60, 63?
Oh yeah, you can do.
Or after.
Yeah, you can do. Right out of the gate, I would say 57 to 63 in that region. It gives you about 7 days. But like I said before, sometimes the applying is stronger than the separating. But again, it's just you have to work with it a little bit and see what makes sense to you, really. Okay, I've got one more thing, Cathy. I really need to get to it. It's the most important one, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, so we got about 7 minutes, I guess. All right, so really the last event that I want to highlight is a seriously big event. Okay, so what's going to be happening is Pluto is going to be in its return. Now, Pluto, first of all, let me just say this. Pluto was demoted a while back to, not a planet, a planetoid, essentially. The more that I spend time looking at Pluto, the more that I think it's actually Nibiru. So for people who are interested in the Sumerian mythology, I would really encourage you to pay attention to that. When you look at Pluto and you read about Pluto, I would be thinking about Nibiru personally. This is the massive planet that's affecting the orbits of Neptune and Uranus. That's past their orbits. It's not something the size of Pluto that's going to do that. And it's not. I actually don't think it's visible. I think it's in the invisible spectrum, which is why scientists are having such a hard time. But it's out there. It's out there. Okay, so the orbit of Pluto. And by the way, okay, I'm going to refer to it as Pluto just because it's referred to as Pluto in astrology, so we'll go with that for now. But Nibiru has been called the destroyer of worlds. I think in several different texts, actually, in cultures. I think Zecharia Sitchin actually said it quite a few times. And it's just really interesting because Pluto is described as the destroyer. Also, it's the destroyer and the transformer. It's actually both. So we'll get back to that in a second. But Pluto returns to the same spot it was in the sky. It only happens once every 248 years. It's a very rare event. This is an exceptionally rare event. No one alive has seen this. By the way, that's a
What date is that?
Well, it's actually coming. Well, actually, here, let me say this first, Kathy. The last time that it was in the position it's going to be in this year
Mhm.
was July 4th, 1776. Okay, we know that that was the inception of the United States. So heads up to everyone that we're going to be seeing a serious shift happening. It's going to be big, very powerful planet. Okay, so this is coming in February. It's February. I've seen February 20th, 22nd, somewhere right in there. And what's important to note about that is that that's also the very beginning of Pisces. So, and what else did we just see with Pisces? You know, when we were talking about Jupiter, Jupiter just entered Pisces, and it's there with Neptune, ruler and co-ruler. So Pluto is, I mean, there's all these things happening with related to Pisces, is what I'm trying to point out. And again, going back to what we were saying before, that you have the positive and negative aspects to that. But anyway, February 20th or 22nd, then it's going to come back for a second pass on July 11th. And then the last one is on December 28th, 2022, which, by the way, you know, since we're matching up things a lot here, is that that's the day that Jupiter entered Pisces in 2021. So you see all these concordances, and that's how astrology works, is they line up a lot of times perfectly so that it really hammer home the point that this is what is going to be happening. Like, everyone pay attention to the Pisces energy, pay attention
Okay,
to
so now
Pluto.
we've got the other side wanting to push through the Great Reset and this digital shutdown, global shutdown. Now, because they do pay attention to planets and stars, possibility of those 3 dates that they may push that idea and that concept through?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if that's, you know, if people are following that type of story. Um, I would also say, well, let me say this too, is that Mars is going to be within 6 degrees of Pluto. So this is it's pretty dangerous, to be honest, guys. You know, I can't really sugarcoat this. Mars is, you know, it's the warrior, and Pluto's the destroyer. So there's something really massive coming, and we're just going to have to see exactly what that is. Could be what
And
you're
it can
talking.
be enlightenment, you know, that's the whole thing. That's what we've been working on. And that
Yeah,
energy has not hit the planet yet. I mean, it's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this has not happened since the inception of the United States. So
wow.
it's coming back for a second round. It is actually it is a reset. It's going to be a destruction event and a transformation event, because that's what Pluto represents. And it's got Mars right next to it within 6 degrees. So it's going to have a lot of that militant quality to it to really, really push it through. I mean, it's not going to be hard at all. It's going to be very smooth pushing it. It's not going to be clean, I don't think, either. But and then I just want to highlight too is that let's see first. Okay, so 2008. This is really interesting to me. Was the first year that Pluto entered Capricorn, and that was also the year that everything started to change. I'll just speak for myself personally. That my spiritual journey started in 2008, and the person I first learned astrology from, Santos Bonacci, his journey started in the same year as mine. A lot of other people, things started to get tossed up in that year. And I think I know why now. You know, I think it was Pluto, the influence of Pluto. The other thing, Kathy, I'd be watching out for is that it's in Capricorn, Pluto's in Capricorn. And so that can indicate the fall of potentially public figures, a pretty inglorious fall, I'll put it that way, because Capricorn, exactly. Now, Capricorn is talking about career and achievement and stuff like that. So people who have achieved, and of course not everyone, I'm just select people, I would be saying, people who have achieved high status and things like that. We might be seeing some fall of some very prominent figures in the
So
world.
we're talking about, say, for example, um, the people on the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that really are creating all this mess. They may go down. Is that what you're saying? This is a good possibility during this time where, you know, they're caught, tried, and found wanting.
I think it's the best chance the past 248 years. Yeah, in my opinion. I mean, there's to be honest, we could also be talking about a natural disaster. I'm not trying to scare people, but there's I think we're long overdue for that. Not that I want to
Yeah,
see it,
but
because I
when you're
don't.
doing energy work, though, you can do it to calm it down beforehand so that
Oh yeah,
doesn't happen. So instead of having a big blow up, the Mother Earth can actually ratchet that energy. But if you know ahead of time that, this energy in these days are coming, now that gives us the tools and the ammunition to neutralize it and to work on it.
yeah, I agree with that. We should always be proactive. Um, and it could also be, it could be an extraterrestrial event as well. I personally been waiting for that for a while, because I ask the question. People who know me, they know I ask this question every day. It's like, where's the assistance? You're gonna watch all of your children suffer like this, and like, is it a game? Are you not here? Is anyone home? Are you not watching over the people you care about? Well, that's a question I have every day. It's a very big existential question, but I'd like to see an extraterrestrial event personally, to get some assistance here.
A benevolent one,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely a good one.
And
Yep.
I agree with you. And I am actually really tired of seeing um, these people on social networks saying, oh, the galactic, blah, blah, blah. They said, they're taking care of this so you don't have to do it. And I'm going, oh my God, that's a distraction. They're telling you, I'm going to do it. Don't do nothing because I've got it handled. And then they're not doing anything.
Oh yeah, and we always need to give support. I agree, Kathy. Even if someone's doing a great job, give a hand, help them out too. Get your energy in there, pushing for positive. I agree. We all have to always be proactive. And then, I just want to get two last things in. It take me like 15 seconds because they're important. So also on February 20th, we're going to be having Saturn in Aquarius, and Saturn rules Aquarius. So again, this is Aquarius at full power. In addition, um, and Aquarius is the one pushing the humanitarian agenda, in terms of like, let's get people to a better place, let's get knowledge out there, let's get inventions out there to help people. Some of that stuff might have to do with maybe possibly transhumanism, or possibly the the continuation of the technology revolution, things like that. But Aquarius is all about helping people out. So that's to me, that's a pretty good thing. And then the last one is Chiron in Aries. Now, Chiron is called the wounded healer, and it's an asteroid that's way out in the outer solar system. And it's the greatest gift and it's the greatest weakness. So we're seeing a lot of intensity. We've got a lot of Mars represented. We've got a lot of Aries represented. We've got the explosive transformation from Pluto coming in. And I would expect some, I just, I know, I really don't want to see it happen, but just let's all be aware of anytime you have Mars in there and Aries in there in a favorable position, you're going to be seeing some real intensity. So just everyone, be ready for that, and
Okay.
always do the best you can. All of us
Now,
too.
not that I want to cut you off, but we don't have much time left. So if people want to get a chart done and all that yummy stuff, and you're also an animal communicator.
I have I mean, I kind of do it in a natural way. The quieter your mind is, the more that you can communicate in the animal world, and they pick up on that. They want to know they can trust you. The more telepathic you are, the more chance you're going to have an animal really being able to communicate with you. I'll put it that way too. But actually, speaking of which, Kathy, I know for a fact that at least so far, dogs and cats, they also have their birth charts, and it affects them equally. That's something I've done several times too. So if people want to look at that, if you've got a pet or something, you want me to look at that, I can do a chart for your pet. And in addition to that, like you mentioned, yeah, birth charts, relationship matching. I do business application things. If you have a business or you're trying to maybe select dates, things of that nature. Really anything astrology at all, I can figure it out for you. Of course,
Okay.
I also
How did they
teach
find you?
astrology.
We got 20 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Find me on Facebook, Dave Petrella. Instagram is Dave Petrella 12. If you want, you can send me an email, davepetrella@hotmail.com. And my last name is spelled P like Peter, Etrella.
Well, there we go. Oh God, you're going to have to come back. This hour went by.
Sure. Yeah.
And on that note, this is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio. And this is January 7th, 2022. Have a great weekend. Be very safe and have a joyful weekend. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Night, Dave.
Good night, guys. Thank you.